and said he was going to call the police on me.
Is that illegal?
I'm not sure it was legal, yeah.
What kept you there?
And actually, nobody knows that. I have never told anyone
Is
that.
it? Welcome back to the Halo Way podcast. In this episode, I will be talking to Dan Mostafavi, who established our partnerships program. He'll be talking a little bit about the early days of Halo and some of the things you don't normally get to hear. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for joining me today. Do you want to just give a brief overview of what you're doing right now?
So, right now I work with Halo's global ITSM channel partners. Channel partner for Halo is another company that either sells licenses or associated Halo services. Those services are usually towards the onboarding, so getting new customers from another system onto the Halo platform.
Perfect. But obviously that is not what you always did.
Yep.
So I've got a list of notes of things that have happened, which was very entertaining. What year did you start? When did you join?
I started in June 2017.
So is that before the Halo rebrand?
Before the rebrand, so I joined Net Help Desk when it was a company of 9 people.
The 10th employee.
I was the 9th employee. It was a company of 8 people.
So I think one of the things that people talk about a lot when they join Halo is their interview memories. And for everybody, some of them are very similar and some of them are quite varied. So do you want to, how did you find Halo?
I left university and my friends sort of dispersed across the UK. Mm-hmm. So I decided I'd go back to living with my parents near Ipswich, so back to Suffolk. Mm-hmm. I thought about working in London, but the cost of living is very high.
What did you study?
I studied business, so just a generic business degree, which proved to be quite useful because it gave me insight into, I guess, lots of different ways companies work.
Mm-hmm.
I finished uni, came back to Suffolk, wanted a job in Suffolk, which immediately narrowed down my opportunities a lot.
Yeah.
Found a company called Net Help Desk, and I thought, you know what, this looks interesting. And I just went for it. I just went for the interview, got invited to do the interview. And first of all, I just couldn't find the place. So I was on Google Maps. And obviously back then we were based in it was an old pub, but it hadn't been a pub for about 40 years or something. So it's
that long?
It's been years since it was the Greyhound. So it was sort of boarded up. It looked pretty shabby. And I turned up. I aimed to be half an hour early. So I thought I'd get there half an hour early, find the place, walk about, come back, get there about 10 minutes early.
Perfect,
That'll be the perfect first impression. I got there about 5 minutes early because I couldn't find it. Banged on the front door of the pub and nothing happened. Like nobody came. There was no receptionist, no one to be seen. So I honestly banged on the front door for 30 seconds.
Oh my God.
Somebody comes around the side and says, oh no, the front door's round the back. We come in round the back. So we walked round the back.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Into the back door of this shabby old pub that was very damp. And the downstairs of the pub was totally empty. And there was another company working down there. And the week before they had left, but they had just left folders and boxes and things like that. So we walked through this weird sort of deserted office that was definitely a pub. Went upstairs and I was told that Paul would turn up soon. I didn't know who Paul was. And I sat there in this room that became the sales room, but it was just bits of furniture on the floor that hadn't yet been assembled. Piles of folders, and I sat there, full suit, shirt, tie, on a hot summer's day, and 10 minutes in, no one turned up. No sign of this Paul guy. It's boiling hot. The office looked pretty awful.
It sounds like a test. Will you stay?
It did feel a bit like that. I went to the bathroom and there were mushrooms in the corner. So it was, the damp was so bad, there were mushrooms in the corner.
That's bad.
At this point, I'm thinking, like, what is going on? What is this place?
I feel like you might get Halo cancelled.
Yeah. And then this Paul guy just turns up. He just walks in. Obviously, I'm in shirt and tie. This guy walks in, he's got backwards baseball cap, football shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. He walks in, he says he's Paul, but he doesn't actually tell me he's the founder of the company. So at this point, I'm like, this guy just does the HR maybe? He's like the interview guy. Must be relatively senior. But there was no real background, so I had to work that out as I was speaking to him.
Oh.
The interview was odd, where it was very conversational.
Yeah.
So I guess interviews there, they're usually trying to catch you out. They're trying to ask sort of clever questions. They say, what are your top 5 weaknesses? And you've got to find a clever way of making your strengths your weaknesses and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you're sitting there the night before practicing it.
Yeah. And none of that practice helped because he was just, we were just having a chat, which was odd.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying something along the lines of, We've only ever hired very academic people. So that had been the philosophy really was, the help desk is pretty complex. We're going to hire really clever people. Straight A stars have to have an A star in maths, if not everything. And he said to me, well, you don't have an A star in maths or anywhere else, as it turned out. Why should you join? What are you going to bring to the table? And I just remember answering, it was something along the lines of, I'm going to bring a different approach where you've got all of these people that have all got very similar mindsets. Maybe I'm going to be something a bit different. I will work hard. And I want to make a difference was my thinking. And I was thinking that if I joined massive company, if I joined BT, which I guess is Suffolk's biggest employee.
Yeah.
Whether I was exceptional or not wouldn't actually make any difference to BT's share price or anything like that. I can't actually make much of an impact, really.
Yeah.
Whereas this small company, maybe I could make an impact. Maybe I could have ideas that would go somewhere. So that resonated with Paul.
I bet that did, yeah.
He liked the sound of it. But he also wanted to recognise that it was a risk for Halo. So he wildcarded, in his own words. He offered me the lowest ever starting salary.
Ooh.
£16,000 a year, which is almost half what the new graduates get.
Is that legal?
I'm not sure it was legal. Yeah. It might have been below minimum wage, but I went with it.
All right.
And yeah, it was for me. Yeah, there's basically no money coming in. It's going to cover my cost of living, but I'm not going to have that much fun.
Yeah. But could you afford to live by yourself with that?
So I lived with my parents, which obviously helps. I didn't have any rent or anything like that.
Yeah, because otherwise I don't know how you'd manage.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Live in the basement of the old office.
Yeah. We'll get to that later in the Hello story. Comes into play later.
I'm excited.
But yeah, I did like Paul. There was an authenticity to him. I later found out he was the founder and CEO, but he was very accessible. He was definitely not looking down on me or anything like that. It was a conversation as equals. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that everybody says about Paul is that when you meet him, he seems slightly strange. He says things you've never heard before.
Yeah.
And you think, is this guy for real? But then he's also very down to earth, like on your level, which is quite nice. But
he did tell me like you could literally do whatever you want and travel the world, but you've got to sort of get through that first period.
Yeah, and
that did actually happen, and I did end up sort of doing whatever I want and traveling the world. So it all came together.
Yeah, because he said, I've got it here that Halo, so this is 2017, he says Halo will be one of the UK's largest software companies in 10 years.
That was a bold statement from a man sitting on a pile of folders from the legal company that had just left the office.
You were sitting on the folders? Oh my God.
But yeah, he did always have this vision for Halo. Halo had, at that point, there were 8 employees.
Yeah.
Turnover was £1.5 million.
Wow, okay.
So we were a tiny company at that stage. And he was 100% certain we'd turn into the company we are today.
Gosh, that's incredible. Oh my God.
So I guess jumping on. So I did that interview. I was like, oh, the money's crap. This Paul guy seems fun. I do actually need a job.
Yeah.
It looks good on my CV just to get a job. Maybe I get a better job later. I get paid something more. But I like the idea of this.
What was your job supposed to be?
So it was supposed to be sales. So I was told I would do a sales job.
Okay.
And I thought, it sounds all right. I'll do sales. I'm not technical. The product looks awful. I actually created a trial as well. I forgot to say, I created a trial the day before my interview. And I couldn't really work out what it did. It just looked awful. But yeah, so I joined, thought I was doing sales. Turned up on the Monday. Banged on the door again. No one let me in.
The right door this time.
Right door, but still no one let me in for like 10 minutes, which was weird.
How did they get in? Did they all have keys?
Yeah, somebody had a key, but they didn't put the latch on, so it used to just stay locked. That was a common problem.
Okay.
But I joined and I was like, right, let's go. Never done sales before, but actually sales does sound quite good fun. I got there and Tom Monahan said to me, welcome to Halo. You're going to be doing support for the next 2 years.
2 years?
And I was like, right, good. So I went into the support room. I sat next to 4 people all about my age. And then this more senior guy who was sat with them, who was Tim Bowers. So Tim Bowers was, I guess he was doing development at that point, but sort of overseeing support at the same time.
Okay, yeah.
And this was Net Help Desk support in 2017. So it was like what I imagine the trenches in World War I were like. It was chaos. There were people calling in, shouting at you, calling in. There were loads of bugs. There were. It was a weird sort of transitional phase where Halo did actually have some big customers. Net Help Desk had some big customers.
Yeah.
But the product was really old school still.
Okay.
So it was that awkward sort of middle ground. And my main memory is Bowers at one point had 2 calls on at the same time on that first day. So he'd put one person on hold, answer the first question, and then go on to the second customer. And he occasionally used to take calls on his mobile as well and do 3 at the same time. So I was blown away by him. And then I also remember, we obviously did a tour, and Monahan was doing the tour, essentially said something on the lines of, we all work together, so it's a very flat structure. If you need help, Bowers is your first point of call, but otherwise speak to anyone, go and speak to the developers. But you can't really speak to Daryl unless it's very urgent because he's working on this secret project.
Ooh.
Which intrigued me. And then Tom said, he's working on a web app. I said, cool. What's the web app? And so Daryl was this like mysterious figure in the corner who you'd occasionally ask for help. Yeah. And if you did, the response was immediate and perfect, obviously.
Oh my God.
But you wouldn't really use him unless you'd used everybody else because he's working on this really important project.
Yeah.
And I have a really clear memory of, it was like a cold wintry day. The office used to be freezing cold because Paul didn't want to pay for heating during the winter. So there just wasn't any. I'd have woolly hat on, coat.
Oh my God.
So we're all downstairs in this freezing cold downstairs support room. And Daryl presents what he's been working on, which is the Net Help Desk web app. And it was 11 of us in what was the main room in a pub looking at what this guy had been working on. And immediate first impression, it was amazing. It really was like you would recognize it as the core Halo platform now.
Okay, I was going to say, does it look like
it's the same design structure. It was unbelievably fast, intuitive, colorful. You could just play with all the colors even then. And it was just this really weird moment where we were a tiny team, but actually that core product suddenly was really good.
Yeah.
Net Help Desk was actually quite functional. So you could do a lot with Net Help Desk.
Yeah.
But the technology behind it is very dated. So it was clunky and slow and not very intuitive. And suddenly we had a great product. And then things got really exciting.
Was that kind of also like the moment where people have just been sitting there telling you these things and you're like, I don't know whether these are true. And then you finally see it and you're like, oh, wow.
I understood what the special project was and why I couldn't ask Daryl how to turn on dark mode. That all made sense. Next on the story was we had an amazing product and I wanted to go into sales.
Had it been 2 years yet?
Doing support, been about 6 months. And Paul decides I'm going to do infrastructure. So really on the spectrum, I feel like infrastructure might be as far away from sales as you can get.
Yeah, I was very surprised to see that on the list. Anyone who's joined after me, I think will be very shocked. You don't give infrastructure
Yeah, I think that's fair. I wasn't very good at it either.
Who was doing it before you?
So it was never a full-time role.
Okay.
It sort of fell under Ian Batley's role a little bit.
Yeah.
But he was primarily a developer, I guess, doing infrastructure sort of in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And I was brought in to do full-time manual infrastructure, so not running scripts. I was like manually deploying new web app clients. And to the extent that, if somebody wants a trial, they just click on start trial on the Halo website.
Yeah.
So I had to just manually deploy that trial for them. So it was a half an hour manual process in like the AWS console where I'd be manually deploying them.
Were a lot of people clicking on that at that time? Like, is that what you just spent?
So I was just deploying trials all day, every day. Want to go live, I had to spin them over. Different region, I had to work out how to do that.
Yeah.
So that was my full-time job for a few months.
Did they give you a pay rise for this?
I think I got up to 18 maybe. 18. It was still pretty bad, but there was a slight pay rise.
I almost want like a counter on the screen. And then a question mark at the end.
And I remember the workload from that actually got really big.
I bet, yeah.
And obviously demand, so there were no overseas offices, but there was still, we were always very global. So we always had certainly American clients from even 5 years before I joined, there were Americans using NetHelpDesk.
Yeah.
Even Australians as well. So I was deploying servers at like 10 o'clock at night.
Oh my word.
And I was like, this is full on. I really need somebody else to come and join this team.
Yeah.
So Paul said to me, what sort of person do you want? We'll see if we can reallocate someone. So I said, I want somebody who's really quiet, just going to crack on and make it work. That was my rough profile. Paul gave me Tim Burton Wines, which was a memorable time where me and Tim were doing infrastructure together.
Was it that he felt that you needed like a professional challenge?
Yeah, maybe. I remember hearing that laugh for the first time and I was like...
It haunts my nightmares.
Okay. No way is that laugh real and no way does he keep it going. And honestly, 7 years later, he's still doing exactly the same laugh. It might even be getting louder.
Yeah, either he's just been working on that for years and he's just really committed to it, or genuinely he does laugh like that. I'm still wondering.
I think he does just laugh like that.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
So it was me and Tim in our own room and we were the infrastructure team.
What kept you there? Because obviously you were told you're doing a sales job. 6 months you've been doing support. That's not what you thought. And then now you're doing infrastructure. Why stay?
I just couldn't get another job. No. I did actually. So everybody was working really hard, but it was a really nice team.
Yeah.
It was genuinely a very sort of flat, fair structure. I had friends at jobs where some senior manager comes in and shouts at everybody, and it's you want to go and speak to the CEO and you bang on the door and you knock on the door and say, oh, can I come in and speak to you something about, and tell you to go away. And it was just not that at all. It was very fair, very even. We'd all go on Friday, every Friday, the whole company just went to the pub without fail. Yeah. Forget about support, just put it on hold.
Yeah.
And back then, even like Daryl would go to the pub and Paul and Ian and Bowers, and we'd all sit on one table at the Spoons.
It was Spoons.
It was still Spoons.
Oh my word.
And Halo does still do that, but it's a much bigger group, mostly of new starters.
Yeah.
But that sort of stayed as part of the culture.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because obviously a lot of things have changed. There are no mushrooms in bathrooms. It's usually quite warm, and all of that.
It's cold this morning, but yeah.
It's pretty cold, and actually it's quite cold in here, but this isn't a proper room. But it's interesting that you talk about that sort of culture and the vibe right then, because that is exactly what we have now. It's still the case that you can go up to people and it's not.
It's really nice. Remained totally flat, which is nice.
It's impressive.
Halo's culture actually hasn't changed that much, considering it was 8 people when I joined, and it's, what is it now? Nearly 200, I think, 175, something like that.
Something like that worldwide, 200 plus.
But that culture has remained the same. It's changed slightly. So I think Halo's had, for me, there have been 3 clear eras of Halo. So you've got Net Help Desk, which was, everybody was doing every role. So Daryl would go on site and do implementations. Bowers was doing sales. Paul was doing support. So it was really like everybody mixed in and got involved.
I mean, Paul technically still does technical support. That's what it says on his LinkedIn.
Yeah, he doesn't actually do any now, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like a distinct era, very much Net Help Desk. And then that ended with COVID. So COVID shook everything up, and we went straight into the COVID era, which was, Paul would use the term, there was lots of siege mentality, where we were all sort of in it together.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, lots of people's social lives and things all sort of died. We were still allowed to come into the office because we had, even then, public sector clients. We had councils and NHS clients and things. So we were all still coming into the office whilst the rest of the world was locked down. So I think we really bonded in a way that maybe we hadn't before. So the whole team got really close.
So nothing else to do.
Nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, we worked really hard during that period.
Yeah.
I mean, people would stay in that office until 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Like the longest I ever stayed was until 7 a.m. We stayed there. We almost did a full all-nighter. We did all really bond during that time.
Yeah.
And then that COVID era lasted up until about the Christmas party. So the 2022 Christmas party marks the end of the COVID era. Or maybe the day after, but that was the end. And then we're in the modern Halo era.
Yeah, because I joined sort of first day 2023, and I was like,
yeah,
sort of subsequently I've learned like this is I'm at the beginning of this new era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's next? Maybe the corporate era. I'm not sure.
I don't think never.
More corporate.
Corporate steaming, maybe.
It's interesting how it was all one team. So it was obviously all Net Help Desk. So there was no concept. Never mind about the different Halo brands. There was hardly even a concept of jobs then.
Oh, okay,
and then under Halo, we did split into the brands. We split into 3 brands.
Yeah.
And I guess we had 3 sort of subcultures.
Yeah.
So the PSA subculture is a little bit different to the ITSM culture.
Yeah.
And that sort of appeared around the COVID phase, then has accelerated into this sort of recent year.
Yeah. I almost, when you see people in support coming in, I almost imagine there to be like like a sorting hat from Harry Potter. And you can kind of see from people's personality where they might fit.
It's very sorting hat, yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Do you not think sometimes you kind of give PSA energy?
I think I do, yeah. I definitely, when the split happened, I did go into PSA.
Oh.
So if we go back to infrastructure with Dubs, so me and Dubs, TBW, stopped doing infrastructure when they scripted it. So it was a manual process.
Okay.
Some boffin scripted it, and Dubs went into sales and I went into account management. So we went our separate ways.
Even though that you had joined first and you wanted to do sales. How did that conversation go?
I feel like, I mean, to be fair, he is more suited to doing sales than me. So I felt like that was fair.
Well, that's a good attitude to have.
Yeah, I was a team player.
Yeah.
So I did PSA account management for 2 years.
Wow, okay.
I actually really enjoyed it. I think account management maybe is seen as one of the less fun roles at Halo, potentially.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
But I really enjoyed it. It was with PSA, you basically, especially in the account management role, you're primarily just working with the business owner.
Yeah.
So I was just immediately working with these really senior people at these companies. This is my problem, and I would present a range of options, and I would, in my own way, help that customer stay on Halo or help that customer get more out of Halo. Which I found more rewarding than the sort of back-end infrastructure job where nobody cared that I'd manually deployed the server. They probably presumed it was scripted in the first place.
Yeah.
So for the first time, the role was quite rewarding. And yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about account management is there is actually quite a lot that you have more control of what you can do, and you can see tangibly what you're doing. And actually, if you're helping out a customer and it means that they can then add on more licenses, it is an element of sales. It is important. So
there's also the point where the customer says, I'm leaving, for example. Then as the account manager, if you persuade them to stay, at that point, you take a fair amount of credit for the revenue they're bringing to Halo, I think.
Yeah.
And it opened the door for me because we had this one MSP who Halo had signed up, and our consultant flew overseas to see them.
Yeah.
And when they got there, the MSP had configured the whole thing themselves really well.
Yeah.
So the consultant basically came back and said, this guy's a total genius. They've just worked out how to configure Halo themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like maybe we could do more with them, get them to be like a case study or something like that. And then I thought, well, why don't we give this Dutch MSP, why don't we give them the opportunity to actually sell Halo?
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously they speak Dutch. They've also got great product knowledge as well. So I managed to get this guy signed up as a partner before we were really doing partners.
Yeah.
It was, by those standards, pretty successful. So I think he turned over £100,000 in his first year, which for a partner then was quite good.
Yeah.
And then the sort of partner role came out of that. So I guess the account management job gave me the opportunity to go into the partners, which then became my final job at Halo, probably.
Well, you don't.
Who knows?
You never know. So had anybody sort of brought up partnerships before that? Like, had that ever been floated as an idea?
No. So it had been, to be honest, it was something that was part of Paul's vision.
Oh, okay.
So he'd read a book called Crossing the Chasm, where the company grows until it's big enough to need third-party people who recognize it and get involved, and it becomes more than just the sum of the employees, essentially.
Yeah.
So it was on his radar, but Halo's so complicated, and we always want to have good service. So really, I mean, all those net help desk customers only stayed because the service was good. They didn't actually stay because they necessarily loved the product. It was always service at the core of what Halo was doing.
Yeah.
And Paul was worried that it would be so hard for an external third party to learn Halo well enough to offer great service. So it sort of didn't progress until we found this MSP who was really good and was able to offer really good service. And that then sort of changed opinions. And we were able to find more people who were willing to sort of go all in and learn Halo and offer the sort of same or even sometimes better service than customers would get internally.
Oh, I didn't know that. I always thought that it was something that was very intentionally done because now it's quite a big element of what we do. And we have whole teams now starting to work on partnerships. So it seems like something very deliberate.
We sort of lucked into it. Yeah, I definitely lucked into it. And then it just sort of exploded where Paul said to me, that was a good idea approaching this MSP. Let's get loads more partners.
Yeah.
So I did some research and I found that there's basically something called, it's an ITSM consultancy company. So companies that run consultancy around specific third-party companies like ServiceNow and Avanti and Sherwell. There's a whole ecosystem of these partners. There are about 5,000 of those companies worldwide.
Wow. So
I literally approached every single ITSM consultancy company in the world, and I got 2 responses. One from Mike at Excalibur and the other from Dave Knowles at iService. And that was sort of the beginning of that sort of new breed of ITSM partners. And those guys been in the industry 20 years already. Both were working with a product called Sherwell at the time.
Yeah.
Which was so exciting for us because then Halo would have been turning over £5 million. Sherwell was turning over 250 million.
Yeah.
They had just signed American Airlines and like some of their really high profile, massive enterprise American clients. And some of these partners were starting to join Halo as well.
Yeah.
And it was just so exciting.
That's really cool. One of the things that you've written here is that you said that you told Paul that you were contacting a partner and he told you that it would be useless and it wasn't worth your time. You did it anyway, and now they turn over 1 million plus in license revenue.
That is exactly what happened. Yeah. So I had the idea. So I approached all of these clients, and I decided to move away from just core ITSM consultancy firms and just start approaching wider technology firms.
Okay.
So I approached a load of those, and I mentioned I was going to approach this one company to Paul. Paul said to me, they're box shifters. It's a waste of time. But he said that, but I knew that he wouldn't mind if I just sort of went off and did it anyway. So there was always a degree of, I was empowered to make my own mistakes, essentially, to learn from it and to have a degree of autonomous thinking, I guess. So I just went and did it anyway. And they're basically the most valuable partner Halo's got at the moment. And I think it's almost cool that Paul, it was never like an ego thing where he was like, I was wrong about it. He's sort of proud that he was wrong about it. He tells people that was a mistake he made.
Yeah. Did you ever feel sort of like worried about doing that, even though he said like that's a waste of time?
Yeah, it did feel like a risk, but I did think they would be good. So it was a chance to prove myself, I guess.
Yeah.
It all came together.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things that really does actually happen at Halo is that there is a lot of opportunity to take that risk on and actually being given a role or asking for a role, and for Paul to just be like, off you go. And you're a bit like, ah. But that must be slightly what you had with the partnerships as well.
Yeah, it was just go off and do whatever you want. I want partners. It's up to you how we get them, what kind of partners, how many, where they are, how we pay them, when we pay them. It was just go off and do it.
Was that not quite daunting?
It was pretty daunting, but it was really rewarding as well. So when good partners came in, it was very rewarding.
Yeah.
And then I guess during that period was sort of late COVID, so there was lots of travel restrictions at the time, and that slowly started to lift. And then I got loads of travel opportunities through it as well, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, do you want to?
So that marks my most fun time at Halo, I think, was when the travel really ramped up.
Yeah, because you're often not in the office, or I've seen that you're like in Brazil with GM. Or do you want to? I don't know. Talk about that. Talk about some of the places you've been. And
I've honestly through Halo, I've been, all over America. So 2 big trade shows for ITSM. One's in Las Vegas, which is really good fun. The other is in Orlando, which is also really good fun. But I've also been across Texas, Colorado, Canada, Brazil, South Africa, almost everywhere in Europe.
Wow.
It's been one of the biggest perks of the job. There's always the option at Halo to bundle in holiday as part of these trips as well.
Yeah, that's so true.
Which is really cool, a real perk. Halo will pay for the flight out and the return, but if you want to spend 2 days in a hotel, pay for the hotel yourself, obviously. Yeah. But you're already in this cool place. So I've been in South Africa and just gone on a safari whilst I'm there.
Oh, nice.
And it just cost me £100 or something just for a hotel for a couple of nights.
Yeah.
Things like that have been really cool.
I think the other cool thing about that, which I think sometimes people don't realize, is that we all book everything ourselves. And so you have total choice over how you get that or where you stay. Obviously, it's not you get total choices and spend the most amount of money, but it's nice that you get to, actually do that, which is...
It is a bit daunting sometimes. So there's a lot of pressure to sort out all of the travel. And everybody's so busy, it's always something you do last minute. So I remember once I was on a flight to San Francisco. I'd got an ESTA because I'd been to... So ESTA is it's obviously the visa that you need to get to America temporarily. So I had that all sorted from the last time I went. But my passport had expired and the passport and the ESTA have to match. So I actually didn't have an ESTA. So I got to the airport. Halo had paid for a flight to San Francisco and I had like important meetings lined up all week. And I got to the airport and they're like, you don't have any kind of visa. You cannot go to America. So I was there just panicking. And I sat on the floor in the airport and somehow it just all came together, a new ESTA in 2 hours.
Wow.
And I got it through, sprinted through security and managed to get on the plane.
That's amazing. I think that's the other thing is that lots of things go wrong because things do just go wrong. It's inevitable. And what I really like is especially I've been on a few trips, and when you see the other person with you, almost everybody is incredibly calm about it, because they're like, they sit there and think, what are our options? Okay, well, that's all we can do. There's no need to panic. Like,
yeah, I would agree with that. People like Paul's fun to travel with because he's obsessed with airlines. So he will literally, I've been in London with him and he's just looked up and said, oh, that's the Emirates 530 to Dubai. So he's like that level of obsessed.
wow.
But it's great to travel with because he just knows all of the loopholes. He knows, he's got all the tricks.
Maybe we should have a whole podcast episode where Paul tells us about planes.
Yeah, Paul would enjoy that a lot.
Yeah, I bet he would.
Trains as well. He's good at trains.
Is he good at trains?
Yeah, he's good at trains.
Oh, just general transport.
Somebody new was late in and they said they're coming in from somewhere that wasn't London or Ipswich. I can't remember, but they were late in and they lied about it. And Paul knew they were lying because he knew the exact time that the train from Norwich was going to get into Stowmarket. So you can't trick Paul when it comes to transport.
That's so funny.
Gianmarco's fun to travel with. So Gianmarco's attitude is cheaper the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that applies everywhere. So if we're going to Sao Paulo, he will book the cheapest hostel in Sao Paulo.
Sometimes there are places where you really don't want to book the cheapest hostel.
The rough areas of Sao Paulo were quite rough.
Yeah.
So he's fun. You've got Dubs, TBW, so he's good to travel with. So his strategy is he's going to get as drunk as possible. For all times you're traveling, he has to be fully drunk.
Wow. That's impressive.
It's an interesting strategy, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it passes time on planes and stuff.
It's fun. It depends on the time. It's fun sometimes. If you're trying to sleep and he's sort of laughing full volume on the plane, it is less fun.
Yeah, I bet he'd get complaints about, the back of the plane being
I've been sat next to him on a flight where the air hostess has gone over and told him he's got to behave or they're going to contact security at the other side.
Wow, well, I wonder whether that's going to get cut.
So I don't actually know when I guess I was doing sales between infra and account management actually. So I did actually go account management, sales, infra. So yeah, I was doing sales. It was Net Help Desk, probably 2018, 2019. So I was doing sales, and sales at that time had Tom Monaghan, who was very experienced, and whilst we hadn't really split the product, was clearly very well suited to talking to more corporate clients like the councils and the NHS clients and people like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Then you obviously had Dubs, who was very well suited to talking to the MSPs.
Yeah.
And so what I was very well suited to was what neither of them were doing. So I was taking on the small opportunities and I was getting a real mixed bag of opportunities.
Yeah.
And one of them was this guy who was very responsive.
Okay.
So often I was getting quite bad opportunities where they just weren't responding. It was just building a Gmail contact form or something, never answered the phone.
Yeah.
This guy didn't answer the phone. But every time I sent an email, he was very engaging. Yes, I'm going to buy it 2 weeks' time. I've got all of these questions, though, first. So I was like, okay, great. He's engaging. This is exciting.
Yeah.
He's going to buy 3 licenses. So I'd get his questions, sit down with Bowers. We'd work out like really good answers to all of them. I'd go away and do screenshots and make it look really nice. And I put loads of effort into it. And I thought because he's engaging, he is going to sign up.
Yeah.
And then we got to the period where he'd been quiet for a long time. So I called him. And his mother answered the phone. And in about 30 seconds, it all came together and I realised I'd just been chasing some A-level student who was just doing an IT project. And actually, nobody knows that. I have never told anyone
Is
that.
it? Wow, it's like a world reveal.
Yeah.
Did you were just like desperate for someone to talk to?
I was, desperate to make a sale. And I didn't sell to the kid. And I got quite annoyed with his mum.
Was she was just confused, I'm guessing.
She was initially confused, and then she did work out what was going on, and then she pretended she worked for her son's company and was a real thing. But by then I had caught on and I wasn't having any.
Oh, that's really sweet.
It was sweet from her perspective, but
nice.
I'd spent hours with like Tim Bowers screenshotting workflow sections and things like that. It wasn't sweet for me.
What could he want it for though? What kind of...
I think he must have been doing IT project. He must have been doing A-level IT. That's my guess.
I feel like though, if he probably at that point had come to the office, somebody probably would have just sat down with him and done that. Like, that's just...
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, that's... Yeah.
That was a loss for me.
Yeah. You live and you learn. Have you done it again?
I have never tried to sell net help desk to a child again, so it's good.
I'm just going to like take that out of context and just post that on LinkedIn.
Is that going to be the opening line?
Yeah. I also want to hear more about the person who's going to call the police.
Yeah, that was a good one. So that was when I was doing account management.
Yeah.
And essentially, Halo's a very fair, very service-orientated company.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy had purchased Halo on a subscription plan.
Yeah.
So you obviously you purchase it each year and you renew and you continue to get Halo essentially. Mm-hmm. And they hadn't renewed for about 4 months. So they were 4 months overdue. Mm-hmm. And they were still using it.
Yeah.
And I cut them off, which sounds a little bit harsh, but this is sort of quite standard practice.
It's business.
The guy had received, I don't know, 5 emails. Mm-mm. We had tried to call him and he hadn't answered. And usually you cut them off and they call in, they're very apologetic, they pay straight away and you let them back in and it's 2 minutes of disruption and everybody's friends again.
Yeah.
And there was about 2 hours where nothing happened. And then this guy had just called in. He accused me of installing malware on his computer and said he was going to call the police on me individually, not even Halo, on me as a 23-year-old grad. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, the police are going to come. I better just let him back in. So I let him back in. He didn't call the police and he left pretty soon afterwards.
Oh. You just dealt with that yourself. I feel like I might have gone running to Bowers, being like, Bowers.
I thought if I went to Paul, he'd be like, just let him call the police then. I thought he would go down that route. He was a bit more ruthless back then.
Yeah.
I felt like it was my problem to solve. And I really didn't want anybody calling the police on me. Yeah. So I let him back in straight away.
Oh, fair enough, yeah. So where do you see your future at Halo? This feels like almost your annual review or something.
Yeah. I haven't had a one-to-one since 2019, I don't think.
Really? How does that work? Is it just because you catch up now and then you don't feel like you need one? Or...
Yeah, it's just like continuous communication.
Yeah, you're heading in the right way.
So what we're going to do is Halo will move towards being more partner-centric. So essentially Halo is growing at or around, I guess, 100% for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Halo cannot recruit internally quickly enough to do all implementations in-house.
Yeah.
Halo also cannot successfully hire, certainly rapidly, globally. So, for example, I mean, we're not going to get a Korean team in place anytime soon. It's just not happening. It's logistically would be very hard. So we're moving towards being more and more partner-centric. The plan is for around 90% of all of Halo's implementations to be delivered by a global network of partners.
That's incredible.
So Halo will, to a certain extent, move towards developing the software and selling the software. Yeah. And I guess marketing things would fall under selling and account management, and infrastructure would fall under development.
So you're just telling me I'm not about to lose my job?
Yeah, you're all right. But we won't ever have a 500-person internal consultancy team, I guess. It's going to move towards really high-quality third-party consultants running those projects.
Yeah.
So in terms of my role, it will take a huge amount of Halo's resources to manage all of those projects. So we're going to be managing the partners, not the customers. And I'll be managing, I guess, a team of people working with those partners.
And that's sort of already being put into place. And more people
it's starting to happen, yeah. So the team is forming.
Yeah. It's really interesting because when you talk to the new grads, obviously when I was thinking about what I could do, that wasn't necessarily an option yet. And a lot of them are now talking about it. A lot of them are very excited about partnerships, which is quite nice.
I've got to go down and explain partners and pitch to them. So I go down and do a big pitch to everyone.
Yeah, nice. So what would you say sort of to where you are today? Because I'd say like a lot of people think that you are obviously a more senior person at Halo. You've been here a while. And I think people also see you as quite successful. What sort of skills do you think have got you to where you are today?
Yeah, I think in terms of skills, honestly, the most important thing to be successful at Halo is actually just to work hard. So there's no like really any secret sauce to it. It is just, you just have to work hard.
Yeah.
I think I've always been good at prioritizing. So it's, for me, I'll come into an inbox. So my inbox in the morning will have 200 emails in, and it's about looking at it from a big picture, not answering the emails that are necessarily the people who are whinging the most, but it's the tasks that are the most important to maximizing Halo's revenue. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is careful prioritization of the most important things.
Yeah, I think that's something that people find very difficult. And it might be because obviously when you're at university, you have to complete every task and to a high standard. And then you go into a workplace and actually you will do much better if you just spend your time doing the things that are important and forget the rest. And if they're important, they'll come back because they will. Yeah.
And it's also, the workload for everybody is very high. So almost everybody is very close to capacity all of the time.
Yeah. Over.
And learning how to prioritize is the only way of staying on top of it.
Yeah.
I would also suggest to new starters, you do actually have to read both Maverick and 7 Habits. Otherwise, it's going to be such a puzzle. So Maverick will explain the culture. Otherwise, it's just going to be really weird because it's just very different to, I don't know, when you're a kid, the job your parents describe. Halo isn't actually much like that job.
No.
Probably. So you have to read Maverick to understand the culture. You have to read 7 Habits to understand how to progress.
Yeah.
So by mastering the 7 Habits, you'll progress.
I think when I joined, I just thought it was really odd that people were talking about these books. I didn't think it was serious that people read them. And actually reading Maverick really was a bit of a switch where I was like, oh, people do just go and do these things and there aren't any managers. It's not a trap. And yeah, it was just, really interesting.
I actually went, so it's actually set in Brazil, and me and GM actually went
to Sao Paulo.
We went to Sao Paulo. We tried to find the factory that it's set in, and it is just a nightclub now. So I don't know where it is. I don't know what the latest is. I actually have tried to look into it. It doesn't seem to exist much anymore.
Yeah, well, this is the thing I've been thinking about recently, is that obviously it was really big in the 80s, and people don't talk about it anymore. And so we had somebody who on the podcast who was a Semco style expert. So these Dutch entrepreneurs worked with Ricardo Semler to bring Semco style to the world. And so that's still going. But of the actual original factory.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything about it.
Which is
quite a good club, but I'd recommend it if you're in Sao Paulo. But
do you not think it's a bit disconcerting?
Yeah. What, that it all turns into a nightclub in the end?
Yeah. Do you think that's what's going to happen to Halo?
I feel like Paul would probably enjoy running a nightclub anyway. So
he might be doing that on the side. We just wouldn't know. No, I reckon we would.
We'd be going there for our Christmas parties, I reckon, if it was a thing.
Oh, yeah, we absolutely would. Yeah.
Who do you want as your next guest? Who's your dream guest?
Cliff Wiseman. Oh, yeah, Cliff Wiseman. He's the CEO of Speechify. So he's dyslexic, and he has so Speechify does speech to text, like audiobooks and lots of stuff like that, and they also kind of want to rival Audible. And I heard a really great podcast with him, and his is very similar. He's just very single-minded, working out of like a kitchen. There was like 6 of them at a table. At one point, they had like a desk in a bathroom, like that, exactly, really similar to Halo. And he is just like taking the company in like ways that people just kind of never thought about it.
Yeah, sounds cool.
But he just clearly has that weird thinking, like things that people don't normally think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs and think the best way of doing it is just to copy what everybody else is doing. And Paul has always tried to do things his way. He's never done something because other companies are doing it.
Yeah.
And I think if you think, what would Halo be like without the Halo way? It would be a smaller company. We would have more managers and less people directly involved with the revenue. We wouldn't be in Stowmarket. We'd be in London probably.
Yeah.
And we'd be spending 10 times the amount of money we're spending on this space on an office in London. So it'd probably be half
managers.
the size. Managers.
Yeah.
So the Halo way is why Halo's successful, really.
Yeah. It's also weird when Paul just says instinct. It seems a bit worrying. almost. It's like we do business on instinct. But actually, there's something really powerful in that when it's all
he makes decisions. It's like immediate decisions. He'll make like really big decisions really quickly, which is kind of scary sometimes. But
yeah. Thanks for watching this episode of the Halo 8 podcast. If you like what you see, you can follow for more. And if you're interested in being a guest, you can email us at podcast@imaginative